What's up, folks? David Soto Jr. here, and this is the David Soto Jr. podcast. Hey, folks. Welcome to episode 5 of the David Soto Jr. podcast. I am your host, David Soto Jr., and coming to you from Boulder, Colorado, and I'm really glad to be making these podcasts. It's kind of scary, like they have to be good, right? Or they have to be interesting, or I have to do a good job. And I just spent quite a few minutes researching the topic I'm talking about today. Today's topic is how I love being Mexican American. And I gotta say, this comes after years of struggling with that, right? Do I want to be more Mexican? Do I want to be more American? Should I be proud of my Mexican heritage? And if so, should I be? I guess I've always been proud of it, but how? Here's the thing that we got to deal with as Mexican Americans. One of them, anyways, is the stereotypes and the ethnic insensitivity, the jokes. I'm still am the butt of many of these jokes. But when you have to grow up with that, when you as a child and you hear that, you don't know what to do. Do you laugh along? Do you start a fight? What do you do? The other thing we have to deal with is the feedback or the lashback that we get from Mexicans, right? We're Mexican American. We're born here. We have our own. We have a different culture than Mexicans, but we look like Mexicans. A lot of us do, anyways. And our last name is very Mexican or Spanish, and so we're expected to speak Spanish. And that's not always the case. So personally, I've dealt with, conflicting things back and forth. But what really got me here recently is to accept it and love it and appreciate it and kind of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Appreciate's pretty good, though. What got me into it more, accepting it, I'm trying to think of the best term to call it, is my memoir, right? I started writing this memoir last year. I read The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, a Mexican American, right? I'm pretty sure she's Mexican American. I should look that up. I'm not going to look it up now. Let's just assume. We'll be all right. If I'm wrong, I'm a little wrong. It'll be all right. I'll look it up later. But I read Sandra Cisneros' House on Mango Street, The House on Mango Street, which was a little fictional collection of vignettes. But there's no way that you can deny that these little stories are about a Mexican American girl growing up in Chicago. Okay? It's fiction, but you can just tell this has a lot to do with her and the character is a young girl growing up in Chicago, and so which is where she grew up. Again, I'm pretty sure I read that. I try to do some research, and I'm not 100%. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. If I try to plan everything out that I'm going to talk about, then I think I stutter through and stammer through and don't do a good job. So I try to be as brief as I can. And it just came to me that I was going to talk about Sandra Cisneros. But I'm pretty sure she's Mexican American. I'm pretty sure she grew up in Chicago. She lives in San Miguel Allende right now, which is super cool. All that time that I spent in Guanajuato, I never knew that San Andres Cisneros lived just, a bus ride away. Of course, I hadn't read The House on Mango Street. So anyways, The House on Mango Street inspired me to right away get up and start writing. Which in that case was to grab my phone, which I wrote my first book on, and start writing. And I was going to call it 1255. I was going to call it The House on 102nd Street. I don't know if that sounds as cool. The House on Mango Street sounds a lot cooler. But I was going to call it The House on 102nd Street. And then I think I changed the title to 1255, which was the address. 1255 is my grandmother's house where I grew up. A good portion of my childhood was spent there. Of course, it was, when it's your maternal grandmother's house, you go and visit all the time. But my mother packed me and my sister up and moved back into her childhood home, where we spent the next 4 years while she pursued her nursing degree, her Bachelor's of Arts in Nursing, Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, sorry. So for 4 years, we lived with my grandmother and grandfather in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in South Central Los Angeles. There are so many stories that I have, and here's the thing, I was going to say the R word, my silly memory. I cannot remember if I walk into a bathroom at Starbucks and I sit on the toilet, I can't remember if I locked the door or not, and I'm wondering if somebody's going to walk in and see me on the shitter. But I can remember long time ago with detail the events that happened in my life. And so The House on Mango Street motivated me to write a little childhood memoir taking place mainly over those 4 years. I have one or two before, and I have a couple after, but they're all stories that took place that have to do with the time mainly that I lived with my grandmother on 102nd Street. I started writing those stories, and I got away from it, and I was working on some other short stories for what was supposed to be my next book. I ended up publishing one of those short stories, and I took a job, started working. I couldn't go anywhere with I wasn't producing. The stories weren't coming to me. I felt like I was forcing them and therefore not doing very well. When I let things come to me, I do a lot better. So that collection of short stories that I intended on publish, it didn't happen. I ended up publishing one of them, which is pretty cool. I like that I did that. And I started to go back to my memoir, and I started writing those little stories out. It follows, The House on Mango Street is such a small book, and most of it is white space because she tells these short stories. So the story will start, in the middle. It'll have the chapter title, start in the middle, and then end a page or two later, and then maybe it'll end halfway through the page. And so there's not a lot to that book, and it's a wonderful book that is, from what I understand, read in junior high. Like a lot of English departments read that. Classes, they read that in junior high. So I thought I can do that, and I think I've already produced a lot more pages than The House on Mango Street itself. But I always wonder if I'm going to have enough time for material to fill out a decent 20-minute episode, and then I always know I'm going to go way over. I haven't even started talking about what I want to talk about. So The House on Mango Street got me to write my memoir. I started writing it right away. I took some time off, started writing these other stories. They didn't happen, and I came back to it, and these stories just started coming back out. And I would write them after I got off work. This is when I was still working last year, and I was cranking out these stories. And one of the ones I wrote was the last one, the last story, the last time I was at my grandmother's house. It didn't take place during those 4 years. That's why I said some of the stories take place after. But I think I have a really, really good book in those stories, and I hope that people will appreciate them. Everyone will appreciate them. There's these stories of this fat little kid, Mexican kid that grew up in a bad neighborhood, and was not allowed to go outside, and had to and whose mother personally drove him to school in Gardena, outside of the school district that I was supposed to go to based on where I lived. She personally lied about where I went to, where we lived, so that I can go to a different school in Gardena. In writing this book, I began to really appreciate these stories and how they really reflect. Now, I want everybody to enjoy them, but if you're Mexican American, you're going to get it a lot more. Just like George Lopez is funny, right? Everybody thinks George Lopez is funny, but if you're Mexican American, not even Mexican, and that's what I realized when I was in Mexico, and I tried to explain these George Lopez jokes to some Mexican Americans that were from Tucson that I was hanging out with, and they get it, but then the Mexicans are like, what are you talking about? I don't get it. And that's what I think my book will, I think it'll be good and everyone can enjoy it, but I think it will really resonate with Mexican Americans. So that kind of got me like, man, I really do like being both, right? Being a Mexican, being an American, having this mixed, our culture is mixed. You know, everybody thinks that we have to pick one. And there's a really cool scene in the movie Selena where he talks about, you know, you have to know, you know, Sally, Jeffrey, Raphael, and Christina, which back in the day was, if you're old enough, you get that those are two talk show hosts, one Mexican and one American. You have to speak Spanish and English, and I think that it's a blend. It's a blend in when I listen to some Mexican American music, like I've recently, like the Texas tornadoes recently popped up, and these are just some cats from some Chicanos from Texas that play a combination of Mexican and country music, and it's and they speak Spanglish. Like they have a couple of all Spanish songs, but their shit is pure, straight up Chicano, you know. Their lyrics are like, she belongs to El Diablo, he can have her, I don't want her anymore. Hey baby, ¿qué pasó? I mean, which is a cool, super, super cool song, and you should really listen to it because it's awesome. And it's like, man, we got our own culture. Like, we don't have to pick one. Ours is the blend of the two. And it's super cool. And it's our own, right? Just like I'm saying, like, we can reference things that maybe people don't necessarily understand because they didn't grow up a Mexican American. The other day, I kind of discovered a song called Mexicano Americano, which I don't know the original composer, but this is a super cool Mexican, like, polka song with, I'm pretty sure with the accordion in it, not 100%. But this song is totally about being Mexican American, and it's in Spanish, but the guy says that he can, you know, he speaks English and Castellano. Like, he can travel from Monterrey to, you know, Los Angeles, or Chihuahua to Nueva York, and he is Mexican by his mother's side, but American. No, was it American by his mother? No, Mexican by his mother's side, and then American by land, by birth. And I was really thinking, like, this is a super cool thing to be. It's Mexican American. Chicano. Which I kind of don't like that word. It just sounds weird, doesn't it? Chicano. But Chicano is the term that was used for Mexican American. So what I was looking up was some examples of famous Mexican American people And there were some people I didn't know that were Mexican American. Jessica Alba, of course, listen to her name, Jessica Alba. But I wasn't like, maybe she had a little bit of Puerto Rican in her or something. No, Mexican American. Anthony Quinn, Zorba the Greek. This cat played all kinds of. He was in Lawrence of Arabia, played an Arab, if that's correct. Anthony Quinn, Mexican American. Edward James Olmos, of course, obviously, right? I mean, he's always played. I mean, he played Selena's father, for Christ's sake. And here's a weird one. I don't know if you knew this. Fucking Wonder Woman, son. Wonder Woman, Mexican American. Not the new. She's Israeli, I think. Not the new one, but the old Wonder Woman. The probably most beautiful woman of the 70s and 80s. I remember my mom talking about how beautiful this woman is. Linda Carter, son. Linda Carter is Mexican American. I didn't know that shit. Blue eyes and shit. Man. No wonder she's so beautiful, son. She's Mexican American. Who else? Linda Ronstadt. Did you know that? That's pretty common knowledge. And of course, she's from Tucson. And of course, she put out albums, Canciones de mi Padre. And then she put out a second album, Más Canciones. Obviously, her father was Mexican American. And the influence of that music. And she sang those songs beautifully. I remember liking them and then playing them for my grandmother. Joan Baez. Of course, I mean, you look at that name, but you really never associate. You just think hippie songwriter, folk songwriter, Joan Baez, Mexican American. I could have swore Sheila E. was like Puerto Rican or something. Wrong. Mexican American. Now here's one that's kind of odd. Vince Neil, the lead singer of Motley Crue. 80s hair band lead singer Vince Neil. I think his mother or something was Mexican American. So he's like quarter Mexican American, but I think that still counts. As far as sports-wise goes, we have Jim Plunkett. See, here's the thing. When the names don't really give it away, that's when you're like, no shit. Jim Plunkett, two-time Super Bowl former. Jim Plunkett won the Super Bowl with the Raiders when I was in elementary school and a Raider fan, so that was kind of cool. Tony Romo. I guess that's kind of cool too. You know, Romo. Is that a Spanish name? Romo? Tony Romo? Tom Flores, coach of the Raiders, while Jim Plunkett, coached Jim Plunkett to a Super Bowl win. Two of my favorites, they made movies out of them, or for them, based on their lives. Selena Quintanilla and Richie Valenzuela, both Mexican Americans, and why I why I favor them as Mexican Americans is because they were non-Spanish speaking Mexican Americans, and they sang in Spanish, both of them. So, and you watch their movies and about their lives, and they're straight up Chicanos. Like they have a family, the same type of family that I grew up around, and it's just nice to see that. These people are so famous. Their stories are so influential that they make movies out of them, and there's no way around it. That's straight up Mexican Americans. And then Freddie Fender, of course, he was in Texas Tornadoes. He's a singer. He was in Texas Tornadoes. Flaco Jimenez. Now this cat, Flaco Jimenez, this cat looks like my grandfather, my mom's dad. Like this cat straight up looks like a old Mexican cat, the way he dresses up and everything. And I saw him on NPR, and he's talking to his guitar player, and they're talking Spanish back and forth, and I'm like, Flaco Jimenez, man, this dude's Not only he was, where did you learn how to play accordion? He was my dad. My dad was a great. And then I watched a YouTube video of his dad, and his dad is hauling ass on accordion. And then his dad, they show his dad speak. He's like, yeah, I learned to play. This fool was Mexican American, speaking English better than me. So you just, Mexican Americans go back, they've been around for a long time. Not just my generation or next generation. We're talking further, way back. My mom's mom, Mexican American. My dad's dad, Mexican American. Like, we go way back, son. Way back. We got a long tradition in this country. We'll wrap it up with a few more. I've been talking celebrities. I've been talking sports. Let's talk about influential people who made a difference in this country. One is Cesar Chavez, activist, and stood up for labor rights for agricultural workers. Very important. Another is a couple that I just happened to look up. Mauricio Garcia, World War II veteran, Medal of Honor recipient. Edward Gomez, Medal of Honor recipient, Korea. Guess what? There's two of them. There's two Edward Gomez's that received the Medal of Honor that served in the Korean War. Lieutenant Commander Everett Alvarez Jr. Now, if you know who John McCain is, you know that John McCain spent, 8 years in a POW camp. Was it 8 years? Let me should have looked that up. 8 years in a POW camp. One of the longest times that anybody has been that was a prisoner of war during the Vietnam War. When John McCain was captured, Lieutenant Commander Alvarez was already there. One of the people who was imprisoned longer than John McCain was Lieutenant Commander Alvarez. It was just a few months longer, but he was there before John McCain. That's kind of impressive. And he turned out to be a businessman or something. Another World War II veteran, Purple Heart recipient, Sylvester Soto, my grandfather. Pretty cool, huh? Parents of Mexican immigrants. Grows up in Los Angeles, goes to war, gets injured, comes home, a hero. Mexican American, my grandfather. Pretty cool, huh? Well, folks, I know this is a pretty specific topic, but this podcast is about me, more or less. And I hope that you can take from this, learn from it. And, you don't dig Mexican Americans, you can go to the next topic. Well, I talk about, avocados or something. Oh, that's Mexican. I should have said something else. Anyways, that's all I got for now, folks. I appreciate you tuning in. Hit me up on Twitter, David E. Soto Jr. at David E. Soto Jr. JR for Jr. at David E. Soto Jr. Instagram. I do the most interacting on Instagram. I like Instagram better. Twitter, you can converse with people, you can have a conversation. You can be like, hey, what's going on? And be like, hey, but not a lot of people really read or look at my posts. I'll put something like, hey, what do you guys think of this? And I'll get crickets. I put on Instagram, the shit blows up, son. I do better on Instagram. And if you want to come find me on there, that'll be cool. At David E. Soto Jr. And my website, www.davidsotorights.com. If you're interested in reading my books and my fictional work and et cetera, it's all there. All right. Peace.